The last episode of House of the Dragon Season 1 aired over half a year ago. I had a lot of time to think about some of the more controversial storytelling decisions that were made by the showrunners and writers of the show. Today's question is, how good is House of the Dragon really? So let's jump right into it. Let's do it. I really wanted to talk about this for a long time. I didn't get to talk about it while I was making actual content for House of the Dragon while it was airing. And yeah, this article right here really goes into a lot of detail with a lot of quotes from Ryan Condal, the actual showrunner of House of the Dragon. I want to talk about it, so let's just do that. One thing that I'm sure you heard multiple times by now is that both Condal and Martin have been working on House of the Dragon for a long time, and he goes into detail here. It was fairly ordained in terms of what George was giving me. It was the specific period in history. This is the thing that he wanted to cover. As soon as I heard it, I said, of course, this is the spin-off that should be made. Coming off that epic original series that D&D did, being able to then tell the story of the beginnings of how the Targaryens lost their power, essentially, was the next place to go if you're telling a prequel that's thematically tied to the themes of the flagship series. So it just made sense for me. They actually worked on a different show before all of that. They worked on a Dunk and Egg show, which thankfully now, as we all know, we will get that. I totally understand HBO foregoing with the Dance of the Dragons. It has a war of succession again. It's full of backstabbing, full of intrigues, and you have a lot of what made Game of Thrones so good in the first place. So it's a logical decision, and I think they made the right choice. And one thing that we were left wanting more of was a lot of the character stuff. I think that is a huge lesson for HBO. They probably went into this, and this was teased multiple times, whether it be on George's Not a Blog, or right in this article right here, where they are talking about when to start it. Martin, who is known for loving detailed world building, wanted to start very early in the timeline. HBO wanted to get right into the thick of the action. I hope that's something that they've learned from, because they could have taken more time to properly set up the characters, and obviously the time jump, the big one where we changed actors for the main cast. Not a huge controversy. I think it all worked out in the end, but people were left wanting more, and that's a big lesson. You can really take your time. And with that in mind, with HBO pushing them to start the damn war, to start the Dance of the Dragons, that's something that I see people blaming the showrunners for a lot of the times, when in fact they were actually fighting to even get the chance to do some of what we saw in season 1. And I actually really do appreciate them for doing that, for fighting that fight, because I'm not here for the dragons, I'm not here for CGI scenes and big action things. I'm really here for the complexity of it. And that all comes with the characters. And we have a lot of very complex characters in this, of course. Whether it be Daemon, who we'll definitely talk about later. That is probably the biggest controversy when it comes to House of the Dragon Season 1. What I also wanted to talk about is this right here. That said, changes have been made. Ryan Condal obviously wanted to do a very faithful adaptation, but there are things that you can't deny, even though Fire and Blood's being very biased and it being written way after all of this actually happened in the history of Westeros. Something like Rhaenys bursting through the floor and killing civilians is definitely something that would have made it into such a book. You can't just downplay it like that and say, yeah, well, it's all biased and we don't actually know what happened, because that's a pretty big deal, and it should be. And that actually is one change that I didn't like. That was, in my opinion, the worst scene of House of the Dragon Season 1, because essentially what House of the Dragon should be about is showing the horrors of war. And that was a very terrible thing, and it wasn't portrayed like that at all. That is the thing that I didn't like about it. I would have had zero problems with it if they chose to, like, emphasizing how bad this act actually was, but they played badass music and then focused on Eve Best's facial expressions, and it was obviously meant to be this badass thing, which Ryan talks about here. There are things that we're going to do in the show that George is not going to love or get right out of the box. I'm always going to listen, and I'm always going to put this material in front of you, and we're always going to have a talk about it. That is the one thing, tiny issue that I have with House of the Dragon Season 1 that I'll definitely keep an eye out for, because we're just getting started. The war is starting now, and I feel like they should definitely portray it as this horrible thing. And in the end, in my opinion, neither greens or blacks will come out of this as, you know, big victors. Even if you continue the story for, let's say, Aegon the Third's reign, who really won? Look at the state of that kid and the state of the kingdoms and House Targaryen after the Civil War. When he's talking about changes here, I hope he, I hope Season 2 is gonna do more changes like Viserys Targaryen and less like Rhaenys. And then the big one. The reason why I even made this video, because I didn't get to properly talk about it prior to this video, is that whole scene with Daemon choking Rhaenyra in episode 10. People were really vocal about that. A large group of people, of fans of Daemon and Rhaenyra, were not happy about the scene, which I personally never understood. And I got a lot of flack for that when I did my tier list video. Again, let's hear it from Ryan Condal himself. I mean, he killed his wife. We've seen Daemon do very questionable things all season long, but he's being played incredibly by an actor who's exuding charisma. He's fun and fascinating and dangerous, the way these great Game of Thrones characters are, like Bronn and Jaime and the Red Viper. We are really drawn to those characters as an audience, but that doesn't mean that they are unimpeachable heroes that are not capable of doing really questionable things. Whether you like it or not, I feel like Daemon as a character can definitely be improved in House of the Dragon Season 2. I definitely feel like the show could do more with Daemon's good side. He's very evil so far. He definitely is, in my mind, he definitely is a villain in the show so far. But I also feel like people are overlooking a lot of what he does in the show. I mean, he groomed Rhaenyra. That's a fact. And to now portray this relationship as this wholesome thing is just, in my opinion, that's just the wrong course of action. With him choking Rhaenyra, because he's a very insecure man, when Rhaenyra reveals to him that Viserys never actually saw him as true heir to the Iron Throne, because he never bothered talking prophecy with him, which is something that they established that the Targaryens always did, that they passed this information about the others from Targaryen king to Targaryen king, or queen in this case, that he then kind of flips was very much Daemon for me. I'm definitely down to talk more about this down in the comment section below, however. Please tell me how you felt about that, how you feel about Daemon as a character in House of the Dragon, and what they could improve. One last thing that I want to talk about is this right here. I've done a lot of work, hopefully successful work, to try to show them that I am one of them. I come to this show as a massive, long-time fan of the books. I read the books multiple times. I've listened to all the audiobooks. I've now read Fire and Blood probably more times than any volume of the Song of Ice and Fire. I communicate with George regularly. I'm as in it as you can be. I am still going to make choices that not all of you are going to like, but on the whole, I am really looking after the sanctity and well-being of George's work. I care about it immensely as both a fan and as the steward and the showrunner. As long as I can lay my head on the pillow at night knowing that I have brought that kind of love and fidelity to his work, then I feel like I've done my job. To wrap this all up, to answer the question, how good is House of the Dragon really? It's really good. I feel like the show is so far superior to Game of Thrones Season 5 to Season 8 that it's almost even laughable to look at scenes and the dialogue of scenes. Just pick a random scene of Season 5, Season 6, 7 or 8 and compare the dialogue alone. I think this show is the best Game of Thrones we've seen on our television since 2014, right when Season 4 came out. If you look at Season 1, almost every episode seemed to have this big moment at the end, this big twist where something related to a dragon had to have happened, or that one scene with Kristen Cole at the wedding, where it's almost like the showrunners were afraid that people would not like the show if they didn't do those shocking things. And in fact, it ended up being the opposite. And that is a very valuable lesson at the perfect time. This was only the very first season of the very first show. And thankfully, this show is not managed by Disney. At the end of the day, it's always gonna be subjective. Thank you very much for watching this video. You're more than welcome to subscribe to the channel. I would very much appreciate that. And thank you guys for watching. Take care and see us later.